Welcome to Unit 2, Lesson 7, Taking Science Exams. So as a lesson overview, what students will need to do in this particular lesson is to utilize several strategies to generate their own exam reviews, some of which they've already started, to organize concepts as a way to comprehend science processes, to ask and answer some higher level questions, and then demonstrate their knowledge in a multiple choice and short essay exam and reflect on their exam performance. So to get started, what do teachers need to know? Well, the first thing you're going to need to do is explain the task. So students will prepare for an exam. It's 25 multiple choice and 3 short answer items over all the material in the unit. And they will create and run their own test review. And a lot of times when students hear multiple choice exam, they think it's a memory level kind of test. And so part of what we need to do is to really convince them that they're going to be responsible for understanding the science processes, and that goes way beyond memorizing a set of vocabulary words to really understanding how all the concepts they learn tie together. So in order to do this, they're going to use the following strategies to help them prepare for this test. So they'll create jot lists, which if they have been through Unit 1, they've already done. They will continue on their concept map that they began earlier in the unit, and they'll do reciprocal questioning, which again they also should know from Unit 1. So the first thing that students will do is to create a jot list. And so ask students to work together in pairs to brainstorm and write down all the concept they learned. So they can do this in pairs, they can do this in small groups, but they want to think through all of the topics that they learned and just kind of get them down on paper so that they know what they need to remember. So to help students do this, you need to really remind them to think beyond that feel in text. So they need to think about the animation, the research articles, the video that they watched. And again, the point to drive home here is that this is not a memorization task. And so even though knowing the terminology is important, it's not really going to help them if that's all they know. So for the jot list, it's a good idea to discuss it as a whole class so that you can work together to fill in any gaps. And you need to know that students are going to want you to refresh them on some stuff. So they'll jot some stuff down and not remember what it is. But it's important for you to talk to them about how what they're doing is really getting ready to study. So they've identified those points that they need some work on. And that's a really good thing to be able to do without the help of the teacher, and it'll really serve them well once they get into college. The next thing that they'll do is expand the concept map that they started in Lesson 4. So using that jot list they just made, they're going to try to put all those ideas together on the concept map so they can see how the ideas relate. So they're going to incorporate everything into one big concept map, and they can tape pages together to make it bigger to give themselves room. They can do it on the computer, but they want to make sure that they have enough detail in there so that they understand not only what the concepts are, but how they relate together. Because this is a revision and in the unit it is for a grade, they're going to need to identify in some way for you what changes that they made. So they could highlight those sections, use a different color, put some sticky notes, something to help you identify, okay, this is what's new on this concept map. This is how they revised it. As they're working on their concept map, it's a good idea to discuss how they're going to use it to study so that they really understand the level of detail they need to include on their map. So what they're going to do is they're going to use it as a way to rehearse the material to make sure they really understand it. So they're going to cover up sections and talk it through, just like the talk through strategy they used in Unit 1 where they took one concept and spoke it out loud. On a concept map, they can do the same kind of thing, but they'll be able to do it over all of the different topics by covering them up one at a time. As they talk it through, they need to not only say what it is, but focus on the connections between ideas so that they are sure they understand how it all plays together. This is really important, as they're talking about all the topics related to DNA, to make sure that they really understand all those moving pieces. As they do it, then they want to uncover each section, check for accuracy before moving on to the next one. And it's a really good metacognitive check of what they know and what they still need to learn. So as they're going through it, they're probably going to see that some points they're really clear on. They're able to say it, no problem. And then some of them are kind of tripping over their words. That's a good time for them to stop, maybe go back to the textbook or their notes or the other sources to re-examine that material again before coming back to the concept map to rehearse again. The other part of their test review will be predicting test questions, and this is a strategy they should be familiar with if they've been through Unit 1 in science. So just like in there, they're going to generate 10 really good question and answers in small groups using the chart in their academic notebook. So the chart just has a place for writing down the question and then kind of bullet point answers. And then they'll use reciprocal questioning to test each other over the concepts in the exam review. Even though they've used it before, it's a really good idea to go over those guidelines again. So in general, avoid what questions. What is transcription is not a good question, but explain the processes involved in transcription is a much better question for them to ask. So they're going to avoid what questions entirely. They're going to predict short answer items. Even though they're taking mostly multiple choice, the purpose of asking those short answer questions is to get at whole concepts. Whereas if they just predicted, a true or false or a multiple choice question, they may only ask about one part of the concept where the test asks about a different piece of it. By asking a question that encompasses the whole idea, they're ready for no matter what the test can throw at them. So it's a really good way for them to start to think about preparing for exams. They want to ask questions that require application of ideas, synthesis of ideas, analysis, interpretation of ideas, not just memorization. Get at those higher levels and get at the big picture. So they want to ask questions that make people really think about the concepts. And a general hint is if it takes more words to ask the question than it does to answer the question, they're on the wrong track. They need to ask a tougher question. And a good way to get started with this is to have everybody just jot one down, right? So everybody write down a question and then just sort of critique them as a whole class and rework some of them to be bigger and broader. Because they're going to quiz each other over the material, and the better questions they have going in, the better their test review will be. It's a good idea to show student examples to help them understand how to predict effective questions. So using the student models, using some other questions to show them the difference between, a poorly worded question and a question that really gets at the concepts. So we have 2 in our academic notebook: list the steps in translation and describe the process of translation. That's a much better question. So ask them to talk about why. Why is that second question better? What does it ask them to do that the first question doesn't? And basically, they need to demonstrate their understanding of how the process works to answer question 2. And in question 1, they really just have to memorize some terms. They don't even really need to explain what they are. So you need to remind students that in addition to asking these really good high-level questions, they're going to need to jot down the answers. And it's really not that important that they have them in full sentences or anything. What they need is enough information so that when somebody answers the question, when they're using it in the test review, they know if they're right or not. So after they have all this stuff prepared, so they have their jot list that they've used to create concept maps, they have their 10 really good question and some jotted down answers, they're ready to conduct the test review. So as they do it, they will do the concept maps in small groups and the reciprocal questioning in pairs using an entire class period to do the test review. So what do you need to know? So spend about half the class on each of the 2 strategies. Students will work in small groups to explain a part of their concept map. And so they'll get together in these groups and each person will take a piece of the map, their map, to explain to the rest of the group. But it's important that they know that they need to have all the concepts covered by the time they're done with that part, so that they can spend a good amount of time really talking through a section, listening to other people's, asking questions, so that by the end they have the entire jot listed concept mapped out, all the topics from this particular unit talked through. After that, they're going to work in pairs to do the reciprocal questioning. And so if you think about it as a jigsaw activity, whatever the group is that they created the questions in, they don't want to meet up with those students. They want to meet with students from the other groups. And so it's a good idea to have them keep switching around every couple of minutes, maybe every 6 to 7 minutes, so that they hear a number of questions and they're able to ask and answer. And again, in reciprocal questioning, people take turns. So student A asks the first question and student B answers it, and then student B asks the second question and student A works to answer it. And they go back and forth like that as time allows. Remind them that they want to try to answer this stuff from memory. This is their check of their knowledge. So try to do it without looking at their maps, try to do it without looking at their notes, and make some, note down where they need to go back and review for the test the next day. Then it's time to take the test. So they will take the 25 multiple choice, 3 short answer items. What you're going to need to do is remind them that even though they're short answer items, they still need to be written out in full sentences, full paragraphs, so that they really get enough of the information down. After the test, they're going to do an exam reflection. So what do you need to know? They're going to do this reflection in their academic notebook for homework, but remember to move on to the next lesson. Move on to lesson 8 as the exams are being scored, and then they can do this reflection after the tests are returned. And it's a really good chance for them to think back on what they did well and what they would need to improve on for another science test. And that is lesson 7 in a nutshell. Thanks.